Humphrey's lunch. Every spring during National Nutrition Week, Mrs. Gludiel gave a lecture on healthy eating. This year was no exception. Gather round, said Mrs. Gludiel when Mr. Jupiter's class stepped into the gymnasium. She pointed to a gigantic food pyramid taped to the wrestling mat. Not again, moaned Humphrey Parrot. Then, in perfect imitation of the gym teacher, he said, Food is the fuel that runs our engines. Rose giggled. You are what you eat. Humphrey continued. Lenny laughed. Food, added Humphrey. It does a body good. Humphrey, said Mr. Jupiter, sit down, please. Humphrey joined the rest of the class on the polished wood floor. He had a perfect view of Mrs. Gludiel's hair-stubbled knees. Food, began Mrs. Gludiel, is the fuel that runs our engines. Humphrey's eyes glazed over. His stomach growled and his thoughts strayed to lunch. He had packed it himself. Can you make your lunch just this once, Humphrey? His mom had asked that morning. I've got an early meeting and I'm running late. Sure, Mom, he had replied. And don't forget the carrot sticks, she called as she hurried out the door. Humphrey detested carrots. Now Mr. Jupiter tapped him on the shoulder, and Humphrey suddenly found himself back in the gymnasium. You are what you eat, Mrs. Gludiel was saying. Mr. Jupiter leaned close. Are you paying attention, Humphrey? He whispered. Humphrey shrugged. I know all about good eating, he whispered back. This is the third time I've heard this lecture. You know what they say in Bora Bora, replied Mr. Jupiter. Tapiti mati vow, or 3 times is a charm. Humphrey's stomach growled again. So in conclusion, said Mrs. Gludiel, food, it does a body good. The bell rang. Lunchtime, whooped Humphrey. At the long lunchroom table, Humphrey elbowed between Calvin and Emberly. Eagerly he opened his Eleanor Roosevelt lunchbox. Out came a can of orange soda, a package of salty chips, a chocolate cupcake, and a bacon sandwich on white bread slathered in mayonnaise. He lifted the sandwich to his lips. Poison! Startled, Humphrey looked up to find Mrs. Gludiel standing in front of him. Humphrey Parrot, she lectured, just look at this unhealthy mess. Sugar, salt, fat, it's all so bad for you. Like a buzzard, she swooped down and swept up his lunch. Only a lonely dollop of mayonnaise remained in front of him. But I'm hungry, wailed Humphrey. Of course you are, said Mrs. Gludiel. You're hungry for something healthy. You're hungry for real nourishment. You're hungry for good nutrition. Therefore, Humphrey, I am going to make the supreme sacrifice. I am going to give you my lunch. She dropped a spinach salad topped with tofu and goat cheese in front of him. Enjoy, she said, and she turned and walked away. Humphrey's friends gazed at the salad. Gross, said Emberly. He took a happy bite of his own tuna pita. Super gross, said Calvin. He merely crunched on one of his cucumber slices. Super duper gross, said Ham, and he joyfully slurped up some of the cook's newest specialty, yak and cheese. Humphrey's stomach growled again. Cautiously, he speared a tiny piece of tofu with his plastic fork. He nibbled. Not bad, he said. He took another bigger bite. Not bad at all. He took several bites in a row. Strangely satisfying, he declared, and he gobbled up the salad. The bell rang. Recess, hollered Humphrey. The salad had left him feeling unusually energized. Who wants to play tetherball? Me, cried Emberly and Calvin in unison. The boys headed for the blacktop. But as they passed the teacher's lounge, the doors suddenly burst open and Miss Turner, led by Miss Fairchild, stepped out. Miss Turner had her eyes squeezed shut. Really, Paige, Miss Fairchild was saying, those fake eyelashes are just lovely, but they're bound to fall off if you flutter them so much. Though through the door, Humphrey spied Mrs. Gludiel. Mayonnaise dripped down her chin as she brushed chocolate crumbs from her mouth with bacon-greasy fingers. Does anyone want a salty chip? Humphrey heard her say before the door slammed shut. They're delicious. For a moment, Humphrey stared at the door of the teacher's lounge. Then he shrugged. I guess Mrs. Gludiel hasn't been listening to her own lecture. If she had, she'd know. You are what you eat, cried Emberly and Calvin in unison. High-fiving each other, the boys raced off to recess. The moral of this chapter is practice what you preach.